welcome to the Third Degree Masonic Podcast, where we are always on the level. We're your hosts. I'm Brother Samuel.
And I'm Brother Gabriel.
And we're just a couple of Masons trying to find our place in this fraternity. Craftsmen, with everything that happens to you and in your lodge, have you ever thought, how can I make this experience better for candidates in Freemasonry? Well, Craftsmen, we have just the guy to answer that question. Brother Bob Painter from West Shore Lodge number 804, who in just a few short years has taken Masonic education to heart and made it his goal to improve it for the candidates. And by the end of this interview, Craftsmen, you too can implement some of his ideas into your lodge programs. Without further ado, let's get right into the interview. And on today's episode, we have Brother Bob Painter from West Shore Lodge number 804. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be with you guys.
How are things looking in your neighborhood?
Oh, they're looking pretty well. We just, we got a lot of stuff coming up here. We have our inspection coming up a couple weeks. We got steady flow of candidates coming to lodge, some events going on, so everything looks good. How are you guys?
Not too bad. We actually just survived our inspection. Was it 2 weeks ago?
Last week. I'm sorry. It was so soon. I was trying to put it behind me, but no, we did a really good job. We were really surprised. We had some hurdles to overcome, and I think a lot of younger officers. Well, obviously you visited. You saw a lot of us are a lot younger.
Yeah.
And I did the senior deacon part for the first time in my life, and I think I nailed it.
Oh, good.
So
yeah, the senior deacon part is very fun. I just got out of that chair, so
I think it's my favorite so far. I was kind of worried about learning a bunch of ritual and kind of being, the guide for everything, but
yeah.
Once I got into the repertoire of it, and, I didn't quite have all the little movements down that you're supposed to have right, but I got there eventually.
Yeah, practice makes perfect, right?
Yeah, no kidding. Especially with when it comes to degree work, and there's just something about having the inspecting officer sitting up there watching you the whole time. You're like, oh God, I screwed that up, and you're just like, just keep walking. The candidate doesn't know.
Yep.
So when it comes to our first question, sorry, Gabe's got my list moved here. So how long have you been a Mason, brother?
I'm coming up on 4 years in April.
4 years. Okay.
I was, as a bit of a story about that, I was initiated and passed in the spring of 2019. And then because of COVID, I wasn't raised until April of 2021.
Oh, okay.
Matter of fact, what had happened was I was set to be raised. I think it was like March 16th, the weekend everything shut down. We were going to do it on a Saturday, and I got the call and said, we gotta shut down. So I had to wait another year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were one of the few that kind of got stopped in your tracks.
Yep.
So what did that feel like?
It was, with everything else going on in the world, it was just kind of unsure of what was going on. I understood why they did it, but it was just, okay, when are we going to eventually able to get back? And, how, I guess, are we going to be able to do it with social distancing and all those things going on? So I was disappointed, but there were a lot of other things going on in the world at that time that I just kind of, put it to the side a little bit.
And then once you got that phone call, I'm pretty sure you were pretty excited.
I was like, April 6th. All right, I've been waiting for this.
You're like, it's about time.
Yeah. And I got raised in April 2021, and then I started my first office that winter in December. My first office was the lodge education officer.
Wow. So you jumped right into it.
Yes. I was at a meeting. It was just a stated meeting, and the incoming master said that he was in need of a lodge education officer still. This was like in November. Mm-hmm. And I had thought about it. Wasn't, I'm like, this is usually an office that, somebody who's been through the chairs, past master or something like that would have. And I kind of asked around a little bit, talked to some Masonic mentors, and my profession is a teacher, so it kind of was a natural fit for me.
Oh, absolutely.
To kind of be confident in doing that. So it was good. I learned a lot, really got into Masonic education, and just kind of took off from there.
And actually, it's funny you say that. That was my first office, not here at Genoa, but when I was at Northern Light. My D. Malay advisor was going to be the worshipful master of the lodge, and he made me his lodge education officer, and he got so much flack from the past masters because I was 19, I think. I would I had just joined. I was only been in for about 6 or 7 months, and he said there is no better place for a young Mason or a young Mason of the lodge to learn what education is in the lodge than to be its education officer. And he was 100% right. I had to dig deep, and I found answers to questions, but also candidate mentorship. So
it was nice too. Yeah, it was nice because I was able to sort of sit back and watch the work, the nuts and bolts of the lodge and how all the chairs worked as well. In addition to that, I didn't have any ritual responsibility, so I was able to, observe all that and get a lot of the parts down at least a little bit before I was made a junior deacon.
Perfect. So, where did you first learn about Masonry?
So I'm a third generation Mason. My grandfather on my father's side and my father were both Masons. So I had known that they were. I didn't get involved into it until about 4 years ago. So it was just kind of the right time in my life.
So it was just kind of the waiting for the right time for you to be.
Yeah, it was something that I had always thought about, for a long time. I was always interested in a lot of things with it, history especially. And I had just had 2 young kids at home, and I wanted to wait until they were, old enough, probably like 5, 6 years old, before I was make that kind of commitment time wise to something like that. So I didn't have to, I wasn't needed at home as much at that time. So it was a little bit kind of good timing, and I went down to the lodge. Well, actually, what I did is I sent an email to the lodge secretary at the time, and I got a response back pretty quickly, and I went up to the lodge and met him there, and the rest is history, as they say.
It's the history we're writing as we speak.
Yep.
It's crazy how that first question, that first moment where you go, yeah, I think this is something I want to be a part of. It's crazy how that's really the start of the journey.
Yep.
So, obviously you've been in the fraternity for a little while now, you said about 4 years now. What is it about our fraternity that you love?
Well, there's a lot of things. Well, one thing I love is that it's an institution where good men are brought together to become even better men, right? This is something where you have to be a good man to even get in, right? I also love the idea of leading out of the lodge, and the lodge setting the 2 main things that are used to divide people, which are partisan politics and sectarian religion. I think that in today's world, those things are ever present in our lives constantly, especially through social media, especially the politics part. And lastly, that the things we're taught are universal truths, right? That they've been around for a long time, right? Talking thousands of years, even before the formation of the first Grand Lodge in England. So I think all of those things are what I love about the fraternity. We all come in on the level. We all meet the same. We leave those things that are meant to divide us outside, and we're able to move forward that way. That's probably what I appreciate the most.
I've always found it fascinating that this is the one organization where both kings and beggars could be a part of, and they're both equal. There's nothing higher than the other once they enter. And
Yeah.
I think you're hitting that nail right on the head with it. Because especially in today's day and age, I think that there's a lot more anger and hatred about these topics, this politics and religion. And I mean, we could even go further when it comes to people trying to talk about, socioeconomic differences and racial differences and cultural differences. And it's amazing to me because those are things that when people talk about them or I read about them, watching TikTok videos or anything like that, I'm kind of sitting there going, that's kind of crazy because I don't think like that.
Yeah.
I'm a Mason. I don't think like that. I don't think, I look at a man and I judge him based on his actions and his character, not based on the color of his skin or who he votes for or who his God is.
Yep.
These are things that don't matter to me personally. I'm sure you feel the same.
Yeah, I just like not even having that, just even the idea of those things like coming up is not anything that you have to worry about. I mean, I'm sure that everyone has their own beliefs and, preferences, political wise or whatever, but, it's in your face all the time, everywhere you go, except for in our lodge. I mean, you probably find somewhere else there isn't, but as far as I'm concerned, in lodge, I don't have to deal with any of those things.
Right. We just, we put them off to the side and we get the work done.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of crazy. Our lodge is, at least here at Genoa, we are composed of so many different backgrounds. And I mean, even, we're all pretty close here. We spend a lot of time together. So we have learned each other's political beliefs and we can lovingly have arguments around a campfire about it. But then we always end up, agreeing to disagree, or especially like when we're here at lodge, we just don't talk about it.
Yeah. Especially I even if we're outside somewhere, I just don't engage in it.
It's not worth it most of the time.
I just don't want to be involved in any any of that type of stuff. I mean, if I want that content, I know where to find it.
Correct. So I agree with you.
Something like
half the time I feel like when somebody asks me something like that, I just look at them and I go, are you sure you want my opinion on this? So what does being a Mason mean to you, brother?
Being Mason means to me that I hold myself to a higher standard, and through my example, I want to inspire others to follow that similar standard or same standard. Because overall, as Masons, I think that we have a responsibility to continue the teachings of the craft and to ensure that they're continued or carried on throughout the successive generations in our craft. So just holding myself to that standard, being what people want to be from a Mason, and that someone else can pick up on that and carry that on for the future generations.
And trying to be a kind of a role model.
Yes.
In a way. Oh, I really like that. So what does that look like for you?
Well, it's always trying to live the Masonic ideals, the meeting on the level, partying on the square, trying to be a just and upright man. All these things you can apply those to all facets of your life, which I'm sure we'll continue to talk about. And just always trying to emulate that. Like, I don't want somebody, some people have these things on their cars that say, Mason. I always look at it as they're looking at me. I might be their only representation of what a Mason is, right? I might be the only one they know. And if they look at me and say, wow, that guy's a Mason, he's bad or whatever, that's not something that I think would do justice to fraternity. So I always am conscious of that, trying to emulate the principles of our fraternity and my daily interactions with everyone.
That's pretty awesome. I really like that. I try to do the same myself. I definitely have some Masons that I really look up to, and I'm definitely not perfect, but I always have to remind myself sometimes when I'm about to slip that, hey man, you're wearing that ring. You gotta, everyone knows what you are. You don't hide it. Maybe now is not the time to lose it.
Yeah, we're all rough ashlers, so it's trying to get to that state of perfection. it's probably not attainable, complete perfection, but you always try to work toward it, and that's what I try to do.
Well, and I think you're right. I think it's maybe a lifelong adventure that we're all having to work on. It's a goal. How do we become that perfect ashlar? And while we may never obtain it, it's definitely something worth trying for. I know I myself have, let's just say sometimes I have a little bit of a temper that needs to be quelled. Sometimes, and I keep my ring facing towards me for that reason, because sometimes I have to look down and go, you got to be better than this, man. got to work on that square and stay in them bounds because it's not worth it. So, what is something in this fraternity that you are passionate about?
I'm passionate about education. There's several paths you can take in Masonic education. I tend to lean more toward the esoteric education. However, I am also interested in the practical application of our teachings, like I said a couple minutes ago. This kind of goes into the Royal Schofield Society stuff, which I'm sure we'll get to as well.
Oh, yeah.
But I just continually, we come to the meetings, right? Most worshipful brother Carter told me something. I'm sure he's told many others as well. Is that business is necessary, but education is essential.
Yes.
And that, we come to the meetings. We don't come to the meetings to hear the minutes read or to talk about the next building project, right?
Right.
We come there for something else, like something has to mean something to the brethren there. So I always look for that. What else can I take away from this meeting? What's one piece of knowledge, one thing I didn't know before? It could even be something as far as a ritual goes, just something I notice here and there. But always learning, always trying to improve myself is the main thing that I'm passionate about. And that also goes into candidate education,
which is arguably even more important with how our fraternity goes and how we just made a new entered apprentice for our inspection, and now we're currently going through some new ideas on how do we make this experience better for him, because we currently have a few entered apprentices and fellow crafts on the roster that we're having just a tough time educating, and we're currently having to take a step back and question, is the way that we've been doing things effective? And if it's not effective, what do we do better?
Yeah, it's hard because, every man that comes in has different perceptions and then different, I guess, goals that they want to achieve. I mean, there are some guys who come in, and I'm sure you know this, that maybe they just want to ultimately be a Shriner, right? And
right.
They want to just get through the proficiencies as quick as they can so they can join the shrine. Maybe it's the Scottish Rite or York Rite or whatever it is. But then I'm working with a candidate currently who is very passionate about knowledge. And so I've taken a different tack with him. I've met with him individually a few times. We just gave him his entered apprentice degree the other night. So what I did is I said, okay, I'm going to meet you up at the lodge. I just did this a few days ago. And I went through everything again with him. I went through because I gave the lecture, so I did the lecture with him again. And I did the charge and explained everything again because, at that night, it's like getting hit with a fire hose.
Right.
Information. And he's that's what he wants. So that's what I'm going to give him. It's kind of, go ahead.
But I think that's a fantastic way. I never thought of running through the ritual again with the candidate. I remember telling our new entered apprentice that to do his best to understand what was going on around him, but it was okay if he didn't catch everything because there's so much going on. I never thought about going through it again without anything there. That's actually a really good idea.
One thing I told him even before the degree was that everything that you're going to hear is from memory. All right. And I remember the reason I told him that is because I remember when I did it, the only thing I could think about was, wow, how did I remember all this? I'm like, that's what blew me away. I wasn't so much listening to what they were saying. I was really impressed. So I said, try not to be overwhelmed by that and just listen to what we are saying. I mean, we'll go over it again, but if you take away the things at the time, it's going to be more beneficial for you rather than forgetting everything and have to start from scratch again.
Absolutely. Well, and I think there's a drastic change in the last few years when it comes to candidate education, because I think we've tried as a fraternity as a whole to try and make a one-way approach to things. And I think you could argue we tried a second approach with one-day classes, but I think just in the last 5-10 years or so, we're really seeing this fitting approach towards tailoring the education to the candidate himself, rather than trying to make him do what everyone else has done. What's best for him?
Yeah, I did that with one candidate I'm the Master Craftsman for now. I met with him and I said, okay, these are your 3 options to demonstrate the proficiency: the traditional, the minimum, or the principles. And he chose the principles. I'm fine with whatever a guy wants to do. The ritual and things will come, in time. I do tell them, if you're really interested in learning the ritual, that type of stuff, if you want to get into the cipher and everything, then maybe the traditional path is one you want to take. But I think that the principles proficiency is really good because it forces them to be introspective about everything, not just memorizing, a return.
Absolutely. Right? And I just had that talk with our education officer. He's who we're working with to develop this new education program that we're thinking of. And I told him, I said, he had some opinions about doing anything except the traditional method. And I said, have you looked at it? I think it's harder than the traditional method because you really have to sit down, and some of the questions even I went, wow, I never thought of it that way. What does that mean?
Yep.
And it made me go, well, let's go find the answer together, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a mix, but I would say more moving forward, we're having more guys lean toward the principles proficiency. I always tell when I was LEO and when I've had guys that I've mentored, I told the lodge before we did it, I said, okay, brother so-and-so is going to do the principles proficiency tonight. And I just say he has to do these 3 things just so they know what they're listening to. You don't want them, starting and they're like, wait, what is this? This is not what I did. And I was like, this is what he's going to do. This is the exam.
And you give him the expectations right out front.
Yeah.
And how is that? How is the reception with your lodge to that? Are they very open to these new avenues of education for the candidates?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it was just a lot of guys just didn't know about it. They always knew that there was the traditional, and a lot of them knew about the minimum as well. But a lot of them just didn't know about the principles of proficiency.
Yeah, and if you don't know anything about it, how can you use it? So, and when I brought it up, like I said, our education officer at the time went, well, I didn't really look at that. Let me take a peek at it. And he called me the next day and said, yeah, I think we can do something with this. He goes, I love this. He said, it's great. He said, let's try it. And we're kind of working on I wouldn't say a hybrid, but maybe an idea of teaching all of them and seeing what sticks with each candidate, because how will the candidate know unless they know what's in front of them either?
But even with that, I guess it's kind of just going back to saying the traditional return, that's what I did. And a lot of it was, okay, I want to memorize this. And not that I didn't think about it, but if I had the other questions at the time, then it would have had more meaning to me rather than just repeating what I went through, getting into the deeper things. I really do like that. Again, my passion is education. So I've even heard of some places having candidates do both. I don't know how thorough. I mean, by both, I'm just doing the obligation from memory and then the principles proficiency, or because in the principles proficiency, you don't have to memorize the obligation; you read it from the cipher.
Right.
So they're still working with the cipher either way. practice the memorization if that's what they want to do. And if somebody said, hey, I really like to memorize that and just do it from memory, but I want to do the questions too, I'd be fine with that too, because you're still doing the same thing. It's just memorize or not.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing we're working on right now, and I'm really excited about it. And Gabe's really looking forward to talking with you about candidate education going forward. But as we're talking about education, and you brought it up a little bit earlier, what was your experience like with the Royal Schofield Society?
Yeah, so the Royal Schofield Society was a great experience for me. I started off, it was great. I mean, I found it as rewarding as it was challenging, right? There's several tasks you have to complete. And for those that maybe listen that don't know, the first task is 3 phases. The second task is 5 phases. The last one is 7. That should sound familiar to the brothers.
Right.
And what I'm trying to do is to be an ambassador for the program. I actually just recently took something from your lodge when I came to visit you guys to do the presentation. Most worshipful Brother Murphy showed me the certificates that you have hanging up in the entry, and I hung mine up at the lodge as well.
It's crazy how proud you are of it when you do that.
And my purpose in doing that, I told the brother, I said it's not to brag, it's to try to inspire others to be able to do it. And, they see it every time. They're like, maybe that's something I'd like to achieve. We do have about a half dozen guys that are in the program. Sometimes guys get stuck with certain things, especially with as far as the writing the papers goes. But that is something that I've told them. I'm like, I'm an English teacher. For that part, for me is, it's not difficult. So I'm willing to help you in the writing aspect of it. And I've had some take me up on it, ask for some ideas, some edits. I've done that. And I can do whatever I can do to help them to achieve their goals. That's what I want to do. Like, so we talked about being, a Mason. I'm someone who, I try to emulate me. I want them to see as someone from a Royal Schofield Society that we're willing to help. It's not like just this echelon thing where we're up here and everybody else is down there. We want you in there with us, right?
Absolutely.
So we're trying to facilitate that as best we can. I'm not sure I can't remember what the final number is. I think it's around 55 to 58, somewhere in there.
Wow.
Total guys. So I'm number 42. I got initiated. I received my Master of the Craft certificate in 2023.
Wow.
At the Grand Lodge.
Very fast.
Yeah, it took me. I started when I became LEO, so it was about a year and a half.
Wow, that is really impressive. I am currently done with my second level. I would argue that my masterpiece is done. I just have to do it. I have I wrote the letters. I did. The only thing that I currently am stuck on is my visitations and doing a lecture or the charge. And sounds like I'm going to have an opportunity to do one of those, the lecture or the charge here coming up really soon. So I'm pretty excited to, I kind of did things out of order. The things that are normally super duper hard were the ones that were easy for me, and the ones that were really easy for everybody are the ones that I'm like, what do you mean you haven't visited outside your district? I'm like, man, I work 5 days a week. Like, I don't have time to drive to my own lodge half the time. How am I going to drive out of, but I'm going to find the time. I'm going to do it. I decided I'm going to do it.
Yeah, that part, like, I guess from beginning to end, for the Master of the Craft, you have to get, those that don't know, you have to travel to 5 different lodges outside of your district, and write up a sort of a report or a summary of what you saw there. That part took the longest from beginning to end. Like my first visit, I think I finished it like 8-9 months later.
Yeah, it takes some time, and you'd think it would be easy, but it's really not. And doing the lecture or a charge for me is the sitting down and the memorizing, and kind of amongst all the other things that we're working on here in our lodge, it's really hard for me to just sit down and do something for myself. So But it's I have to make time for it, and I have to make it happen, you know?
Which one are you doing, the lecture or the 3 charges?
So I've tried to work on the lecture. I started with the Fellowcraft lecture, and I'm hitting a wall with it. I think I might try and do the Entered Apprentice lecture first and see that one, because I've seen it the most, and I think it's the most familiar to me. And
yeah, I did the Master Mason one.
Oh, see, that one I might be okay with that one too. I've seen that one a lot.
And the reason I did that is because I knew that we were going to be inspected in it, not the year I was in, but the year after that. And the only other guy that I knew that knew it was becoming a district officer.
Yeah. And
I'm like, well, that should fit well.
Yeah, good. He's going to be able to take a day off, so I'll do it.
Yeah.
I did the same thing, and that's kind of why I'm working on the Fellowcraft lecture, is because currently Right Worshipful Brother Syme is the main guy at our lodge that does it, and he does a beautiful job. I mean, I don't know if you've ever watched Right Worshipful Brother Syme do ritual work, but it's a treat. He puts his heart and soul into it, and I always, when I watch it, I'm just kind of awestruck. I'm not even paying attention. I'm just like, oh, wow. And the way he goes over everything, I'm just kind of like, can you teach me? But he's so busy with doing everything right now. I feel so bad asking him for help.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he's very, very busy.
But so and for those of you that haven't listened to any of our previous episodes, when it comes to the Royal Schofield Society, your final, we'll say, project is to do your masterpiece, your PhD thesis, your beautiful work of art that you will turn into the Schofield Society. And it's kind of left up to you on what you want to do it on. There's some criteria, of course, but once you get it approved and you get your thumbs up on it, it's pretty open to interpretation, why I think it's really cool. What was yours about?
I did mine on the Chamber of Reflection. The title of it was Chambers of Reflection, History, Purpose, and Implementation.
Wow.
And so the background for this is, before I got my MM degree, I was placed in the Chamber of Reflection, and it really had a profound impact on me as far as like the meaning of everything, introspection. And I took away from that. I said, I want everyone to be able to have this type of experience. Maybe they won't see the same thing experience the same things as me, but they're going to have the opportunity to do that. So I was LEO to start, and that was my first education program, was on Chambers of Reflection. And it was something that our lodge did. We didn't have a separate room like we do now, which I'll explain a little bit.
Sure.
That we did it in the prep room. And it was just sort of like a makeshift thing.
And for our listeners, especially some of our out-of-state listeners, could you explain what the room of reflection is, or a chamber of reflection is?
Yeah. So a chamber of reflection is a room where the candidate is mentally prepared for the initiation into the fraternity for EA, and then also before they get their Master Mason degree. It's a room that's secluded. There's usually certain items placed on the table that have symbolic meaning in the way of transition or transformation, as well as a volume of sacred law, whatever that brother's happens to be. And also, as the name reflection, there's a mirror as well. The candidate is taken into that room, and everything else is supposed to be symbolizing everything else from the profane world and the outside is blocked out. And you have time to reflect on why you're there, what you want your journey to be, sort of get a meditation before you actually receive the degree of Mason. You're not hurried into it. You have time to reflect upon it.
That's actually really interesting, because I did not have anything like that when I joined, and I kind of wish I did.
Yeah.
Because there's so much information that's being bombarded at you.
Yes.
You walk in, and I remember I came in, it was an inspection night. It was full of people. I shook a bunch of hands, and then all of a sudden they plopped me in the prep room with one other guy that I had never met before. And luckily I had been a DMLA before all this, and I kind of knew what was going on. But I just remember my ADD brain was just kind of all over the place. And it would have been nice to have somewhere where I could have contemplated what I was joining. I didn't know exactly what I was joining, just knew that it was the next step for a DMLA, more or less.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that has, as I've talked to the guys that have gone through it, our chamber, that they do appreciate it. They, especially the last guy that we just had go through, the guy that I'm mentoring. I that's the first thing. Like when we met at the lodge, I said, "All right, we're going to start here," and I took him to our chamber, and I said, "Just tell me what you thought." And he said, basically, what I just said to you, that it was a time to just block out everything, sort of meditate on what's going on, what he's entering, this sort of new phase of life. And he really appreciated it.
And it's fascinating because I remember when you came to our lodge and you spoke about one, because we're currently in talks of building one ourselves. I just found it fascinating because I am not typically the esoteric guy. I'm the practical guy. But there's some levels of esotericism and even just deep thought when it comes to something like that, where having those moments of being able to precognitively go over what you're going through. I mean, having those items on the table that you kind of put you in the right headspace. Debatably, you could argue even in a practical way, not even in an esoteric way, that having one improves candidate experience, therefore would hopefully improve candidate retention. They feel like they're getting that moment, that they feel like they're joining something that's a cut above the rest. They're not just joining the elks or the moose or the eagles or something like that, because they too have initiation stuff too. I mean, it's everybody kind of rips us off a little bit, but if we're being honest. But what is it about Masonry that puts it a cut above the rest? Why are we the premier organization for these things? And I think implementing one is one way to improve that experience.
I mean, here's another way to look at this, right? So in our lives, today's world especially, how often do we have time just to sit and reflect on something quietly, right?
Right.
And just have all the outside noise blocked out. And there's not often.
It never happens. I mean, there's always some kind of stimulus. You know what I mean? There's always your phone vibrating, the car driving by. It doesn't matter. There's always something going on around you, and having a space like that to just think.
Mm-hmm.
And Masonry is supposed to be a life-changing experience, and it is. It was for me, and it was for Brother Gabriel for sure, but it's supposed to be something that you change your life by. It makes you a better man, and to have that I don't want to say metamorphosis is probably maybe the wrong word to use. An epiphany, maybe?
Well, I think when you get into the esoteric aspects of it, it is a transformation. It's kind of like a rebirth. You're going from, darkness to light, right? So there is that metaphysical, as you're saying, transformation in that aspect of it. Yes, there definitely is that. And that's why I like this so much, is the esoteric level of that. But from a practical standpoint, as you were saying, just the time to sit and think. And there's different angles you can take from it.
What got you interested in these chambers? What did you see one? I know you said your lodge has one in the prep room, kind of, but was it that got you interested, or did you someone tell you about them?
No, nobody told me about it. That is what sparked my interest, is when before I got my MM. That's what sparked my interest in it. It's just something that, I kind of get focused on something and I just want to know everything about it, and I've done a lot of research, especially with my masterpiece and everything. This isn't not every lodge does this. I remember going to another lodge, one of my foreign visitations, and I just asked one of the officers there. I said, "Do you have a chamber of reflection?" Because I'm researching it, and he said, "What is that?"
Yeah.
So it is something that we've become. West Shore has become known for. Is that? I mean, obviously, I've had my masterpiece on it, right?
Yeah.
So
you are arguably the most knowledgeable man about it, I would argue, at least in the state of Ohio. You did your masterpiece on it.
Well, I don't know about that, but I do think that, I've tried to be, like we use that word ambassador. I've tried to be an ambassador for it as I came to visit your lodge. And we've mentioned this a few times, but you had Most Worship Brother Murphy asked me to come and give my presentation because, as you said, you guys were trying to think about creating one, building one. And I just gave my presentation, and we went back to your area thinking about how we could transform it. I would like to spread that around, right? That it is something that is worth doing. There does have to be a lodge-wide buy-in to it, right? It can't be something that. So in my lodge, I'm training other guys to do it, right? Especially as I move up in the chairs, I have other responsibilities before the degree.
Can't always be you that's taking care of the candidate. Somebody else has to, especially if you're the worshipful master. You got more important. Not more important. That's the wrong word to use, but you have other things on your plate. Somebody else needs to be step up.
Yeah, and it could either be our lodge education officer, because that's when I was LEO. That's what I did. I took charge of that. It could be the marshal. It could just be another brother. But the more guys that know the protocol and how to do it, then you get the lodge-wide buy-in. It's just not, it's just not Bob's thing that he does and let him do it. I don't want that at all.
No. And, you spoke of it before. It's not a common thing, at least in the state of Ohio. It's not a common thing to have one of these chambers. Is there a reason for that?
Well, they kind of went away, just the practice of them, after the Morgan affair.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So that really put a lot of clamps on guys trying to get to the esoteric level of stuff. Just try to get rid of any of that sort of idea of reflection and the mysteries and sort of that way of thinking. So that they just ultimately fell by the wayside. And all the research I did, a lot of places had them, like they had a place for them, but eventually they just became storage rooms.
Right.
I was reading about one that I don't know where the lodge was. I think it was in Texas, but they had made it into a storage room over time, and they were just cleaning up the lodge, and they found like these different symbols in there, and it was just like this perfect encapsulated space, and they brought it back to life. They re-implemented it. Maybe there's some lodges around that are in the same situation that was originally one purpose and now it's not. Ultimately, a lot of places will also use this. Was my first experience is they have their prep room double as the chamber, right? But that is not, if you can avoid it, that is not something that you want to have to do.
Right.
Those should be separate spaces. Like when I gave my presentation to you in my masterpiece, the way that our lodge is set up, we're able to have these sort of separate areas, and we have a nice flow the way that the lodge is built, right? They can move from one room to another, and into the lodge, right? It shouldn't be the same place that you get prepared in, right? Because there's the mental and physical preparation.
Right.
They should be separate places.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. The space should be dedicated for what it's going to be used for, not multi-purpose.
Right.
And especially when you're talking about the kind of objects you have in these chambers, they're not something you want shuffled around and being disturbed. They should be. That's what their purpose is for.
Yes. You don't want to lose stuff. Oh, where's this? Oh man, who had it last? You don't want that. It should all stay there.
But sorry, I absolutely lost my train of thought there.
It's all right.
My ADD brain over here. So when you have these candidates in these chambers, and you have them before the meeting, before they're about to get their degree done. How long are they in this chamber for?
I try to make it about 15, 20 minutes.
So nothing too crazy.
Yeah. Anything longer than that, I start to wonder, like, why am I still in here, or what's going on? Is there something I should be doing that I'm not? You don't want it to be a quick experience either. Sometimes things happen in the opening, like come up. Like the other night, we had a last minute proficiency that was done, and when I had timed it out, I wasn't planning on that. So the guy was in there a few minutes longer than he should have been, but there's no harm, no foul.
Yeah,
so.
You didn't forget about him in there, though.
No.
Hey,
no,
man, sorry.
All right, let's get him out.
You're here for a degree? Sorry.
Yeah.
Meeting's over. Try again next week.
But yeah, I mean, even because we've had, and when I started off, I mentioned we have, a number of candidates and so forth. So the other night we had a double-entry apprentice degree.
Wow.
And we may have another one coming up soon here. It depends on how the investigations of votes go. But we have like a whole spreadsheet of, at this time, this guy's going to do this time you put him here. We should be doing this in the degree at this time. So it's all well thought out. And that was something that was created with all the branches in our lodge. How can we best facilitate this experience?
Well, that is awesome. I guess that's a heck of a problem to have, is having to figure out how you're going to facilitate 2 entered apprentice degrees at the same time and have them that high quality. But it sounds like you guys are absolutely killing it over there.
Well, the other was it last year? I think it was last year, early of 24 or late 23. We had 3 straight meetings of double entered apprentice degrees.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, one of them was special, but
right.
Still, we had that many guys like coming in, like, we got to get these guys done. I mean, you don't want guys just saying, okay, you're in, but we'll get back to you when we're available.
Right.
We need to, if a guy's, we voted for him, let's get him his degree, even if that means we have to call a special. We just have to get it done.
Well, I'll tell you what, brother, we're going to take a quick couple minutes here, and Brother Gabriel is itching to get on the mic and to pick your brain about all of this, because this is this is what he has dedicated himself to now that he is done being the worshipful master. And I don't want to take up all of your time and answer all of the questions that I know he's got. So, Craftsmen, just join us here in just a couple minutes, and we will be right back with you. Hey there, Craftsman. Brother Samuel here.
Hey, Craftsman. Brother Gabriel here.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to our content as much as we have enjoyed making it for you. It really has been a blast. But we do have a request for you if you've gotten any kind of a gain out of listening to our show.
Craftsman, we'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to fill out a survey connected to our podcast. In the description of the episode, you'll find a link to that survey. After you complete the survey, which will have sections for questions, comments, as well as answering all the questions, 2 lucky winners who complete the survey will win a free Mason gear hat. And we all know that they're quality Mason gear hats.
Oh, and just so you know, I picked them. They're hats I would wear, so they're pretty cool.
So thank you, Craftsman. If you have the time within the length of your cable tow, we'd really appreciate to hear from you.
And now back to the interview.
Welcome back, Craftsman, to the Third Degree Masonic podcast. Thank you for joining us. And Brother Bob, thank you for rejoining us as well.
Absolutely.
So I know we discussed earlier about what you do for a living, being a teacher and an educator. But do you do that at the high school level, young adult level, college level?
So I'm a high school language arts teacher.
Okay.
It's my 24th year doing that. I also I am an assistant football coach.
Oh, nice.
As well.
That's
I'm doing that for about as long, probably about 20 years doing that.
Well, I'm glad that you like to foster like a coaching type of education as well as your language arts education, because I think that's That's very nice of an educator like yourself to be well-rounded in that, having physical coaching as well as mental coaching with your academic as well.
Yes, trying to be well-rounded. Had the different. There's different lessons to be taken from everything. So I grew up playing football my whole life. At different points in my life, I also coached wrestling. So I was a wrestler in high school. So just trying to continue those lessons that I learned from those things to the youth of today.
Well, I very much like that. And so that leads into our question attached to this of, do you feel being a Mason makes you better at your profession?
I think it does, in that if you apply the things, but I do. So I think it makes me better in that I try to apply, especially the Masonic principle of squaring my actions to my dealing with my students, my players, colleagues that I have, as well as prudence, trying to make prudent judgments. What's the best thing to do right now? I always kind of keep in my mind those things. Can I square what I've done here? Did I treat this person fairly? Was I acting on the level with them? So those are things that I try to take from Masonry and apply them to my life.
Well, I really like that. And that almost answers our next question too, of how do you prefer to take the lessons of Masonry and incorporate them into your daily life? I know we've been talking this whole time about, well, we can't really achieve perfect ashlar, but we can try. And you strike me as one of the people who definitely takes the teachings of this fraternity to try to make yourself that perfect ashlar in your daily life and all of your interactions as well.
Yeah, I try to. I would like to think that I'm more successful at it than not. I always try to square my actions. Patience is another lesson. Time, patience, and perseverance. Those are things that are important to me. All of us become impatient at times, whether it be through our jobs or, in Freemasonry, become impatient at times. But we always have to remember that, these are teachings that we get in Masonry have been true for thousands of years. It's not just something that became new and I just found out about. These are things that men have practiced for centuries. That, how do I know better than them? I think that I can apply the same things that have been true for thousands of years to what I do today.
Well, I like that. And I think that's a good opinion to have on it. And it's a noble to try to do that in your daily life. And it exemplifies the qualities of Freemasonry all around.
Yes, it does. And again, it's the practice of trying to make that happen, right? Yes, you are successful at it, but if you maybe one day lose your patience, you can't be like, well, I guess I can never bother with that again because, I failed at it. You have to keep working at perfecting it.
Yeah, and that's something I'm working on in my life journey currently as well. So an overarching question to that, as well as an overarching question we've had for several of our past interviews, is, do you feel that Masonry has made you a better man? I mean, of course, you were a good man coming into Freemasonry, but has Masonry directly made you a better man?
I think so, yes. 3 areas that I think it helped me. And one is the idea of self-improvement, to be able to reflect on my own character, my own strengths and weaknesses. And that helps me work toward being a better person, more balanced, patient, thoughtful. The second one is the intellectual growth, cultural growth about it. Freemasonry, as I mentioned, has a rich history, right? And the philosophy is based on knowledge, enlightenment, wisdom. Encourage us to, the whole point of Masonic education is to encourage us to seek that kind of knowledge, engage in discussions, and be continuous, lifelong learners for that. And the focus on mental growth inspires me to kind of broaden my horizons, improve my understanding of the world around me, people I may disagree with, try to see things from their perspective. Those are the ways that I think has made me a better man in that way.
Well, brother, I really appreciate that. And I must say, just from hearing you talk at the lodge and hearing your opinions on some of the things, you have definitely inspired me to want to keep learning about Masonic education topics, learn about how to mentor candidates better. And I really appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. That's one thing, I'm hoping to impart. Like I said, I'm trying to be ambassador for these types of things and inspire others to do it.
So before we get into some of the closing questions that we have, because I like to handle the tail end of the interviews because I like to ask some of the thought-provoking final questions. I do have one question from just myself as a lodge aspiring candidate director to one like yourself. What advice do you have just kind of for me or for any other aspiring lodge mentors or people who want to mentor candidates? What's a good way to get started, or maybe what's a crucial thing to think about when it comes to candidate mentorship?
I think one thing that we've sort of learned from this is you try to match up the candidates with someone that you think that they're going to mesh with. You have to find people willing to do it, of course. There's that. You may be limited in that aspect. The brothers are willing to be master craftsmen, that is. But you try as best you can for that, because that is going to be their main point of contact as they go through the degrees, right? There are going to be some meetings they can't come to because we're doing it in a higher degree or we're doing another different degree that night. But if they have that point of contact, someone that they can trust with, because they're going to build a relationship, not just memorizing ritual or answering questions, but that's going to be their person that they continue to look up to. That's going to be a lifelong bond that they're going to have. So first thing, find someone that you think that candidate's personality, as far as you know them, is going to be able to mesh with. Second thing is try to find out what this person wants from Freemasonry. Especially we have internet inquiries today. You may not know really anything about this person. Always try to find out what they're looking for. Are they looking for the brotherhood? Are they looking for the fraternity aspect from it? Are they looking for the educational aspect of it? What is it that they want? And you can try to shape their master craftsman to that, as well as how you approach learning the proficiencies, trying to get them involved in different things in the lodge. Because that's one thing that I really want to focus on is when we go do investigation committees, is I want people to come in our lodge that are going to be active people. And what I mean, I don't expect them to be an officer necessarily. But what is it that they are good at that they can help with? Right. So if you're someone who, say, they're very handy, right? They're good at carpentry or they're good at cooking, whatever it is, maybe that's something that you can task them with that they can take on. Something that they're proud of that they can do that they can help the lodge with. You will find some people, as I mentioned earlier, maybe they just want to go into the shrine after that. And if that's what they want to do, then that's that person's journey. But I definitely want people that have an intention of being active. And that's kind of a Masonic cliche, but guys who are going to be active in the lodge and active in the fraternity.
Well, I really like that. And I don't think you've gotten a chance to meet him yet because he's a relatively new EA, but our most recent entered apprentice, he is very excited to have a sense of brotherhood, a sense of belonging to something, because he just got out of the Marine Corps recently, and he wants to have connection with men who are trying to inspire themselves, who are trying to make each other do better, to kind of rekindle that flame from his military service.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that. The post-World War II boom, post-World War I boom membership, a lot of that was that. Guys coming back from wars and missing that camaraderie that they had been built throughout the years. My grandfather, I mentioned he was a Mason. He was in the Navy in World War II, and he ended up becoming, in the state of New York, the Grand Commander of the Masonic War Veterans of New York.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this was just like a separate organization within Freemasonry. So that was a big thing with him, is he wanted to get, involved with that. So it is definitely a lot of military. I don't know at your meetings if you do this, but at our meetings we always recognize veterans of the armed services.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do that here.
We do that, yeah. So that is definitely a big part of Freemasonry. We have a lot of veterans.
So, and we're always happy to have them, and it seems to mesh pretty well.
Yes, it does.
So, as we get into the tail end of the interview, I do just want to thank you for all of your insight and all of your advice. And hopefully these last few questions will kind of make you think a little bit and make you really appreciate being on the podcast with us tonight.
I hope so. That's great.
So my next question is, do you have a Masonic idol or hero? And this can be someone contemporary, from your own family, someone you know, a historical Masonic figure, or even someone who may exemplify the teachings of Freemasonry, but maybe is either not necessarily fictional, but their true membership in Freemasonry may be a debate for the more esoteric scholars of Freemasonry.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I have a idol or hero, but there are definitely a couple guys who have supported and inspired me as I've gone throughout my journey here. The first one was my mentor. His name's Right Worshipful Brother Brian Iceland. He is a current district deputy grand master of the 22nd Masonic District, my district. He was my master craftsman as I went through the degrees, and he's always been there to answer questions that I have, give advice, help me learn ritual. So he's definitely, and still is, a touchstone for me for that. And the other one is Most Worshipful Brother Bill Carter.
Oh, yes.
I was really inspired by his passion for education and knowledge in our craft. I was at his Royal Schofield Society Masterpiece presentation this past summer that he gave, and I was blown away at the amount of research and reading that he has done. And I even asked for the bibliography from his masterpiece, and I'm starting to work my way through that. I've got two of the 8 books that he had referenced down.
Wow.
So, and then as a matter of fact, last night I saw him. We had a fundraiser at our lodge for Grand Lodge 2025 his year. It was Robert Burns night, and he was the guest of honor for that. And he gave a brief education presentation on our brother Robert Burns, and just another presentation he gave that's really interesting is a presentation on anti-Masonry, the anti-Masonry movement in America.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's like a 5-part presentation, and I've only seen part 1, and it was over an hour. So it is The amount of knowledge that he has is something that I aspire to.
No, we're big fans of Most Worshipful Brother Carter. He's been to our lodge a few times. He and Charlie know each other. He's a wonderful man, great Mason, and I think great Grand Master too. I mean, I know we're not so super long into the term, but he's doing a great job so far, I think.
Yes, definitely.
And maybe
I've had the pleasure of introducing him a couple different times.
And we hope to be able to have the pleasure of introducing him potentially on the podcast here.
Ooh.
Yeah.
We're working on getting that situated.
Getting the schedules to line up.
So, with our closing questions, I hope to really pick your brain a little bit here.
Okay.
So, what advice would you like to tell Masons of the future? Or if you were to encounter a young man or a brand new Master Mason, say 50, 80, 100 years from now. I mean, of course, the fraternity will still be going strong then, like it always does. But what would you like to tell them?
One thing is definitely going back to education is pursue the lifelong learning. One of the great aspects of Freemasonry is the opportunity to have personal growth, right? Be curious, always seeking knowledge, encourage everyone around you to kind of do the same. So just never stop growing, always be open to new ideas, not just within the craft, but even outside of Freemasonry as well. From a leadership perspective, nothing new, but lead by example, right? Leadership in Freemasonry isn't just about titles or authority. It's about setting the example. Just because you aren't a district officer doesn't mean that you don't have something to offer. Be the kind of Mason that others look to for guidance, whether it's your character, your wisdom, how you treat people, especially is a real big one. And with that, build strong relationships. The Masonic bonds aren't just about being in a fraternity. They're about forming these lifelong, meaningful friendships that we all seek. And that's human nature, is to have these bonds. And you prioritize them by investing your time and working on creating them and these connections with your brothers, not just seeing them for a couple hours once a month. You have to go out of your way, check in on the brethren. How are you doing? Meet up outside of lodge, do lodge activities outside of lodge, like this coming Sunday, tomorrow. We have our annual breakfast in the park that we have here, and
nice.
for our lodge. And it's in the middle of winter. We have it outside, and we have a pavilion that we cook all the food there. People bring stuff. We have guys from other lodges that come, and it's just a great fraternal experience for that. And if you miss out on those things, you're missing kind of the larger picture, right? You want to be able to do things with your brethren and build those bonds. You don't do that just by meeting once a month. You do it by doing other things as well.
Well, that's a great message to have. I mean, not even for future advice, that's a great contemporary advice for right now, for local lodges that may be seeming to struggle to find a point. They need to kind of reinvigorate themselves with that same sense of local fraternity, just in that kind of way with their own members.
Yeah, our worshipful master this year he's a former DMLA. Well, so he is very much into the activities. Mm-hmm. So we have breakfast in the park. We're going to have a brotherhood night at Fujiyama. It's a hibachi place coming up here in a few weeks.
Ooh.
And yeah. It's a brethren and ladies night. So we'll bring our ladies to that. Also, we have a mystery trip coming up in May. He hasn't told us what it is, so I guess we'll find out. But that's just something that's just for the brothers. We had a Christmas party as well. So you have a mix of things that involve family or just the brothers. You got to have a balance there as well.
Well, that's really great, brother, and I'm glad that your lodge is doing that kind of stuff, and hopefully you can keep us up to date with that, and maybe it'll give us some ideas too of stuff that we can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so our final closing question, brother, is for those future Masons that we were just talking about, what would you like your legacy to be to them?
I want to be someone who helps, I guess, guide the next generation of Masons. I think, sort of get off on a bit of a tangent here maybe, but I think young men today are really looking for this sense of brotherhood, fraternity. We're so isolated in our lives with our phones and social media. I'm guilty of looking at that stuff too. But it really is something that I think can benefit young men to be a part of this fraternity, learn the values of it. And there really is something for everyone. And I think we're missing out on an opportunity if we don't try to facilitate that. Not just from there's a numbers perspective, to have so many members or whatever, but just trying to help the next generation. And that's what I'd like my legacy to be someone who helps guide the next generation of Masons, teaching and inspiring them to live by the values of the craft, try to have a lasting influence on them in that way, leave behind a legacy of shared knowledge, whether that's through the written work I've done, like the presentations, or simply just being a person that they can turn to for some insight about the craft, or maybe it's just helping them a piece of ritual or etiquette or something like that. And then lastly, the strengthening the bonds of, we need to strengthen the bonds of brotherhood within the lodge, create an environment where others feel supported, respected, encouraged to grow, pushed, even in ways to be able to improve themselves. Because we don't push ourselves in our lives, we don't grow. So that could be how that could look Masonically, is learning a piece of ritual, taking on a responsibility. Again, it doesn't have to be an officer. It could just be maybe you're in charge of an event. That's how you grow, right? That's how you become a better person, a better man. In this case, is taking on those responsibilities, understanding what you did right, what you did wrong, how you can improve. We're always working to improve the rough ashlar, trying to get to the perfect ashlar. So that's really what I want my overall legacy to be.
Well, I really enjoyed that, and that I can definitely tell that you're an educator from that kind of response, and I appreciate that, because I think it's keeping the idea and the structure of the fraternity, but knowing that there needs to be just a real sense of belonging and a real sense of appreciating Freemasonry, but also appreciating the brothers that make it so, and having the opportunity to use this fraternity as the teaching tool that we say it's supposed to be. And I really appreciate that.
Yes, it's like last night, I mentioned this earlier in the podcast, we had a Burns night, the fundraiser, and it was open to anyone. It didn't have to be Masons. So we had a couple of our petitioners there, and it was a place where, we had the Grand Master of Masons in Ohio in the room, and we had guys who aren't even in the fraternity, they're just petitioners. But that was on a place they could meet on the level, right? It's not in a lodge room where we got the fancy aprons on or any of that stuff. It was just a place for brotherhood. And it was a really great experience.
Well, I really like that. And I think that's a great note to end on, I think, brother. Great message.
I love it.
Craftsman, thank you for joining us tonight on the Third Degree Podcast. We've had a great time tonight interviewing Brother Bob. And Brother Bob, we thank you so much for being on the podcast tonight.
Thank you. It was a great time.
And as always, Craftsman, please remember,
keep your working tools in order and always be on the level.
Craftsman, thank you for tuning in to the Third Degree Masonic Podcast. We always appreciate all of our craftsmen listening to us, tuning in to us. Craftsmen, we here at the Third Degree Masonic Podcast do have a request for you. As we've been saying over the last couple episodes, in the description, you will find a survey you can take to make sure that we're all on the same page going forward. You can add your comments, reviews, and answer a couple of questions we've posed to make sure that we're providing all of our listeners the content that they want. And as an added bonus, 2 members who take the survey will receive a complimentary Mason Gear hat. And as we all know from our raffle back at Grand Lodge, as well as a couple other competitions, these are quality Mason products, and we're happy to make sure that our listeners who take the time out of their day to give us a survey, make sure that they are entered to win one of those hats.
And rewarded.
And rewarded, yes. So, Craftsman,
Also, if you could, share us with your Masonic brethren. If you can find it within your heart. If you know somebody that likes to listen to Masonic podcasts, share us with them, Craftsman, because the only way that we're going to get around is by your help.
Absolutely, Craftsman. We can make sure that available on our social media posts are virtual business cards and virtual links to all of our content that you can share with your Masonic brothers. If you can find it within the length of your cable tow, to share with your lodge brothers, share at a lodge picnic, share at a lodge fellowship event, or when you're traveling to an inspection with a brother who hasn't heard of our podcast before, put it on the radio and see if they like it as well.
Thanks, Craftsman.
Thank you, Craftsmen. Have a nice night.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of the Grand Lodge of Ohio, its officers, or any of its jurisdictions. They only reflect those of the hosts or guests.